It's just a beautiful thing. I mean, I've never seen a religion that just cuts across the races like Islam. This was the wake-up point, I think, for Malcolm X.
Yeah.
It was when he came to Mecca and Medina, when he came to the holy cities, and he described in his biography how he was praying behind an Arab imam, and he noticed that there were Caucasians in the congregation. And afterwards he asked the imam, don't you realize that there are some Caucasians in the congregation? And the imam had, actually, it's like, what, huh? And looked around and, as if he had never really thought about it, and said, oh, yeah, of course, And that was very striking to Malcolm X to realize that there were people who didn't even really think about the issue of color. She had married me against the dictates of her religion and her church, because Roman Catholic are not allowed to marry an atheist, which is what I was. But she married me all the same, and then when I became Muslim, we actually reaffirmed vows and remarried a second time because she was feeling so insecure. But despite all that, she divorced me because I didn't want to have statues all over the house. It's kind of interesting because, subhanAllah, you think of how devoted some people are to their idols. I told her, look, you can have a room in the house that's all yours. Just make it into make it into your own personal sanctuary if you want to. I mean, you can fill the room with whatever you want to. I'll never go in there. I just don't want these statues of a crucified Jesus, bleeding statues of the Passion, and so on all over the house. And I said, so just, put them into one room, and that'll be your room, but leave the house for the rest of us. And by the way, I'm paying for the house. So do I not have the right for this? And she preferred to divorce me than to remove her statues. But in any case, she went. I remember she went to the court. The judge was a lady. The judge asked her, why do you want a divorce? And she just said, I just want out. And she said, is he abusing you? No. Is he hitting you? No. Is there psychological abuse? No. Then why do you want a divorce? I, just want out. I just want to be divorced. And so the judge put a restraining order on me against my wife's wishes and without her asking.
You see a lot of new Muslims, they have very difficult times with their family, and when they go in through it, they don't realise that with time it's going to get easier. I remember when I was actually living with my parents at the time. I didn't tell them I was Muslim for over a year, and but when they found out, it was difficult. I had to move out and.
Really?
Yeah.
That's common in England, isn't it?
But that was quite easy. It was quite easy for me. But
yeah,
other new Muslims, they have it tough.
Yeah. I've heard so many stories, but I have been struck about how in England, in particular, there seems to be a very low threshold for parents throwing the kids out. I've been amazed by that actually. The family attachment just doesn't seem to be that strong. Hey, we were talking a little bit about our tribe, the Caucasian reverts. One thing I've noticed with interest is that problem does not seem to exist among other ethnicities. The Hispanics, the blacks, and so on.
I think generally family ties. I mean, of course, in America, you have the Christians. They have a strong sense of family. Within the South.
Really? Well, not always.
I would say compared to England, I mean, the families are really broken down now.
Yeah, my wife and I met in Amman, Jordan, and we had an arranged marriage, actually, which is a different story. A Westerner going through an arranged marriage is something truly frightening. But, having had the experience of married once in the traditional manner, dating and living together, and then marrying in my days of ignorance, in my pre-Islamic days, and then having an arranged marriage as a Muslim, I would never never get married any other way.
SubhanAllah.
SubhanAllah. You know, they have a saying in the Middle East, they have a saying that, you know, in the West, women marry for love. Or they, you know, they marry the man they love. And in the Middle East, women love the man they marry.
SubhanAllah.
And, you know, it's, you know, the dynamic is that love develops between the couple who marry with sincere intentions. But the interesting thing was that when we did get married, she came and joined me in England. So we lived in England for 2 years, and then in America for 1 year. And for the entire time, I just remember my wife saying over and over again, everything is upside down in the West. Everything is upside down. We were newlyweds at the time. We were taking a walk on the streets of Cambridge, and there are many restaurants there, and they all have these large plate glass windows that allow the people inside to see out, and of course, the people outside to see in. And so we passed restaurant after restaurant after restaurant, and my wife kept looking in a very curious way, looking at all of these people eating, you know, at the tables. And after 3 or 4 of these places, she asked, Abdullah, what are these people doing? I'm talking about 20-some years ago. So I guess she said, Abdullah, what are these people doing? And I said, well, they're having dinner. And with my first wife, we always ate fast food and ate out and so on. My first wife barely cooked. And so here I was remarried with a wife who, you know, was cooking and taking care of me and feeding me well and so on. And I really didn't want to go there to eat. And, you know, also to navigate halal, haram food and so on and so forth. I just didn't want to do it. But I saw my wife, you know, looking, and I didn't want to disappoint her. So I said, so would you like to go have dinner, you know, in one of these restaurants? And she said, no. And she looked at me and she said, Abdullah, don't these people have families? SubhanAllah. You know, because, I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. To her eating, you know, eating dinner, you know, it wasn't about the food. It was about the family. It was about the social experience. And, you know, we as Westerners are raised to believe that this is the high life.
Yeah.
You know, you want to live the high life. You want to go. Yeah, exactly. This is the, you know, this is the sign of success and so on. To her, this was like the sign of failure. These are destitute people who don't have, you know,
you feel this,
families to share the experience with.
When you go to a Muslim country, you know, Morocco, Egypt, or wherever it may be,
yeah,
you really do feel this sense of family. You know, even as a tourist or a traveller, they invite you into their home. They'll give you the food. You know, they're very hospitable, and this is the culture of Islam.
And they take pride in hosting people. And by the way, you know, cultures worldwide are becoming westernized. The time-honored value of Muslims, especially of the Arabs, you know, among the time-honored values are hospitality and honesty and generosity, you know, and among the Arabs in particular, people used to basically compete with one another on these things. The Arabs used to compete in these virtues, and in the West, these virtues are practically lost. I mean, one of the things that is really striking to me is just the level of moral decay in the West. Did I ever tell you why I came to Saudi Arabia?
No.
I'm an ophthalmologist. You know, financially, the opportunities in America were much better than the opportunities overseas. I just came upon an advertisement looking for an ophthalmologist here in the Middle East by the group that I did join, which is called Maghribi. And I had interviewed for the position, and I was considering that compared with the other opportunities I had in the States, which were much more lucrative. And it was not an easy decision at the time. And I was thinking about it back and forth with, you know, talking with my wife, considering the, you know, the advantages of coming to a Muslim country versus the advantages of staying in America and making more money and so on and so forth. Well, right about that time, there was a couple in our area. They were both doctors, and both wildly successful. They were working in private practice. They drove new Mercedes-Benzes every year. They had all the trappings of high financial success in the West. And right about that time, their daughter turned 18, the age of majority in the States. And the moment she turned 18, she went to her parents. She took off her hijab. She said, I want a boyfriend, I want an apartment, I want to live as I want to live. I'm out of here. And she did it. She left the home. She took off her hijab. She started living in the Western style. She started living in Zina with a boyfriend in an apartment, going clubbing, going drinking, and so on and so forth. And so, the best part of that was that she was drinking alcohol and dancing, and living in Zina. The worst part of it was that she left the religion. And her mother was just, psychologically destroyed, and she couldn't work. She basically collapsed in her home, and she just stayed at home, crying, and just saying over and over again, I would give everything for my daughter. I'd give everything to have my daughter back. And it was their only child. And my wife and I looked at our situation. We had one daughter who was 1 year old. We just said, you know what, that makes our decision a whole lot easier. And so that's why I accepted the position here in the Middle East. And the rewards of living in Saudi Arabia and in Medina in specific just are difficult to count. You realize how unimportant money really is. When you look back, just the blessings of living in Saudi Arabia and Medina in particular far outweighed any additional financial benefit I think I could have earned for myself in the West. My wife is Palestinian. She was born and raised in Kuwait. And then during Desert Storm, their family moved to Amman, Jordan. One time we were talking about the innocence of children raised in the Middle East. And because she was the oldest in the family, she had raised a lot of her brothers and sisters, or helped with their raising. Which, by the way, is something else that it's an amazing thing to see how tight the families are in the Middle East. They take care of one another and they nurture one another. Whereas in the West, if you take the oldest boy or girl in the family and say, help raise your brother or sister, they see that as an imposition. They see that as, a problem, a weight upon them, a restraint upon their happiness. Whereas here it's normal and they enjoy it, and you see them nurturing one another and playing with one another. But in any case, she told me that up until adulthood, she remembered how her youngest sister, even as she grew up into her teen years, when she would see on the television Tom and Jerry, and how Tom will see the female cat, his eyes would sort of bug out, and then his heart would sort of pop out of his chest, and you see this big red heart, popping out. When her youngest sister, who's named Heba, when Heba would see this, she would turn away from the television blushing. That was the level of innocence of these, just a beautiful level of innocence of the fitra of the people of this area. Now, okay, you compare that with, take even a 9 or a 10-year-old in America, and the studies show that the average child in America, by the time they're 9 or 10, have been exposed through the internet to hardcore pornography. Not just nudity, but hardcore pornography. Where is the innocence anymore? And if you're losing your innocence, if you're losing your visual and your mental and your spiritual innocence at that age, what's the chance for you as you grow up? It's terrible.
It's frightening.
Yeah, it is frightening.